Okay, very quiet, please. Stand by.
See on his mark there?
Makeup, whip in from the other side, quick. Makeup. Whip in from the other side, quick.
Are we trying rehearsal or what?
Roll sound.
Rolling.
Roll camera.
Rolling. Marker.
Alpha 27 Baker, take one.
Represent.
Action.
All right then, punk. Let's go. Let's set this off.
Filmmaking is a balancing act that juggles time, resources, and personalities. It is a process that coordinates thousands, if not millions, of dollars worth of equipment, personnel, and resources, and arranges for them to arrive at the same place at the same time. It sees them through a set schedule in a given number of hours, packs them up, sends them on their way, and then does it all over again the next morning. Behind the aesthetic choices, even beneath the mechanics of the craft, lies the basis of filmmaking: organization. What is often overlooked by the student of cinema is that narrative filmmaking is, above all else, an organizational process. Without organization, filmmaking is chaos. The director of photography cannot set a shot unless that shot has first been blocked by the director. The gaffer cannot light a shot which has not been set. The art department cannot prop a shot unless they know what that shot is, and so on, down through all the departments. If these very basic things do not happen, the film cannot be made. Disorganization eats up time, and nowhere is the equation of time and money more apparent than on a film set, where thousands of dollars worth of equipment and personnel must be paid for every day, often by the hour. It takes the concerted efforts of an entire staff of people to schedule, budget, and efficiently run a film set. These duties are spread out over a large support staff, but responsibility for the day-to-day progress on set rests with one person, the assistant director, also known as the AD. In order to understand how a film set runs, you must ultimately understand the role of the AD.
Him and a you and a script supervisor away.
Are you serious? Okay, so we're looking at 4.5 pages.
That's fine.
Okay, but the script will be shorter. It has to be, because we don't have that much time in the movie.
Yeah.
So it's really about 4 pages a day.
This video chronicles the making of Second Story Man, a 30-minute independent film shot in Minneapolis. Tell us about Second Story Man and your involvement in it.
Well, Second Story Man is a half-hour short film that I wrote, produced, and directed. It's the story of an artist who lives in a rough neighborhood in South Minneapolis who takes a really creative approach to bettering his neighborhood and building community at the same time, all at the same.
Although not a Hollywood production, Second Story Man was organized according to the Hollywood production model in the same manner by which shoots have been organized for well over 80 years, using the same division of labor and the same organizational techniques developed by the studios. Principal photography extended over 7 days and utilized 8 separate locations. The multiple locations, large cast, and low budget of Second Story Man necessitated a high degree of organizational readiness. With only enough money for 7 days of shooting, there was no possibility of running over schedule to finish uncompleted work. Mike Tabor works as an assistant director in Minneapolis and was the AD on Second Story Man. We spoke with him after the shoot about the film, about his job, and about the process and philosophy of organizing a movie set. I'd like you to describe your job. What does an assistant director do? Why do you need an AD on the set?
Well, starting with the last first, why you need an AD on the set is without one to be just a bunch of people with equipment standing around, around the craft service table. You need somebody to provide direction, say, here's what we're going to do, and make sure that everybody's informed what we're going to do and be moving in the same direction. So the art department isn't, dressing for scene 23 while they're lighting scene 16 and things like that. Everybody's, we're sort of the people that lead the charge up the hill.
The assistant director is only the most visible member of an organizational staff that includes both on and off-set positions. Among these are the production manager, the locations manager, the second assistant director, and the production assistants. Collectively, they are known as the production department.
The production manager is technically the head of the production department. They work on the schedule initially, along with the producer and maybe the AD. They handle all bookings, the financial things, the setting up of accounts a lot of times, dealing with vendors, the paying of vendors, ordering of equipment, meals. They have a full-time 16-hour-a-day job on a production and maybe never even show up on the set. The location manager secures the territory or the area that we're going to be shooting in, making sure there's power there. They're sort of the property managers securing the area. Second ADs work with the first assistant director in whatever areas he assigns them, generally paperwork and dealing with extras and things like that. And then the production assistants are sort of the legs of the whole production. They're the ones that run around frantically telling people to be quiet and getting this and getting that.
The key production department personnel are brought on well before shooting begins and are an integral part of helping translate the script of the movie into actual filmed material. Tell me about the process of prepping a script for shooting.
The process starts with a breakdown of a script. You're going to go through scene by scene and pick out all the people, the places, how many pages it is, how long it is, do a page count of it, and all the props and everything, and separate those all out. And then they all go to their various departments. And once the breakdown's finished, now I can strip it out, and I can create a strip board with each strip representing a scene with who's in it and things like that. Then we start to schedule it, and I just arrange the strips with like things together.
After 2 months of pre-production, Second Story Man began shooting on the 26th of August. What do you need from the director before you start shooting, and what do you need from the director of photography?
Actually, I need more from the director of photography than the director. Director, I just need a shot list and a rough idea of what they want to look and the texture and feel and things like that. I'm not an artist, I'm a manager, so I don't need to know about all the underlying emotions and things like that. The director of photography, I need to work with a little more closely. I need to know specifics of power, where, what's a picture cell, a safe area to run cables through and things like that. The director of photography's got a lot better grasp on the physical nature of the shot, and that's who I tend to communicate with more closely.
What were your biggest concerns going into this shoot?
Weather, locations, and money, and they all were kind of tied together. We didn't have the money to shoot longer, which meant we were really bound to the weather behaving, because we couldn't afford to shoot anymore. And we didn't have the money to secure the locations as thoroughly as we needed to on some of these shots, particularly some of the chair delivery shots. We didn't own enough of that street to...
So you couldn't pay enough to have the location just be yours for the entire time you needed it?
Ultimately, you like to own all the environment and everything in it, and in this case, we didn't.
Okay, so we'll just get we'll have you enter into frame.
Okay.
And this is just going to be a shot over your shoulder, Monica, of Tavi coming into frame.
It's pretty musty.
I love that shirt, but I'm
I think
thinking
the shirt's fine.
Oh, please. At some point he's got to wear this.
Shirt.
Please.
That's very.
Can you just walk me through briefly? Let's say you arrive on set at 6 a.m.
6 a.m. I'm going to meet with my second AD, or both of them, depending on how many I have. And we're going to talk about who's arriving at what times, who's going to start in makeup first, and who's going to go through wardrobe first, and things like that. Where the first setups are, where we're placing extras. Talk about what, lunch, how many for lunch, and start trying to get a grasp on the whole day, but primarily focusing on what's up first.
An hour after call time on day 1, it began to rain. Second Story Man was largely an exterior movie, and too many delays caused by bad weather could make completing the movie within the 7 budgeted days impossible. What factors do you base your scheduling on?
Weather a lot, actor availability, especially in the lower budget things where your actor may be an actor today, and then tonight they've got to wait on tables, and you have to get them out by a certain time. But weather is the first primary thing. We try to get all our exteriors in the front of the schedule so that if it rains, we've got somewhere to go. We've got an interior to go hide in. The cover set for Ben's film was Bing's apartment. That was chosen because it was the easiest location to get to. We always had access to it. We almost always had access to the actor. And it was a very small, controlled situation that was easy to duck into at any time.
Rain continued throughout the morning. With bad weather forecast for the next 2 days, and with only one cover set to retreat to, the decision was made to continue shooting. The schedule was reworked so that scenes which could be shot in the rain were filmed first thing in the morning, while scenes that could not accommodate rain were saved for later in the day.
We're only about 2 hours behind schedule today.
The rain stopped before noon, but the problems continued. What was your biggest surprise on the first day of shooting?
Well, I noticed that there seemed to be a lack of craft service, and especially I'd only seen a craft service person once on set the whole day. And when I had a free second, I sat down with the production manager and said, what's going on here? And she informed me reluctantly that the craft service person had gotten in a car accident and had been arrested and taken away by the police in handcuffs.
How do you deal with that, and is there any way to even prepare for it?
Yes, there is. You look at each day, what can go wrong, and try to stay to the schedule. If something goes wrong, you just move around it and keep moving in the same direction. You don't let it panic, you don't let it throw you, but just say, okay, what's the next shot? Why is this unexpected event interfering with this shot? Let's eliminate it, bypass it, buy our way out of it, whatever, but keep moving forward. Crew members get arrested or whatever. Okay, somebody's got to jump in to that and fill that gap, but I can't let it interfere with what we're doing now. That's what I use.
Despite making up for lost time after lunch, the day finished behind schedule, due not only to rain delays, but to generator problems that continued throughout the day. How do you end your day? What things have to be done before you leave set? How do you plan for the next day?
The day is going to end with talking to the gaffer, the director of photography, about what's happening the next morning, so I can prepare the second ADs and the other departments for what's coming up. Art director should also be involved in those discussions as well. A lot of times we'll sit and we'll draw out the first 3 or 4 shots of the day, the first 3 or 4 setups, so that as soon as the trucks arrive and the crew arrives, we can get them working. We end the day with the distribution of the call sheets and maps.
What is a call sheet?
Call sheet is a roadmap for the next day's work or a work list. It's got the who, what, where, when, how, why. This has been prepared by my second AD during the course of that day. And then near the end of the day, I'll look it over, sign off on it. It'll then go to the production manager, who will also sign off on it.
Cut.
A rain-free day. Much of the material from day 1 had been pushed back to day 2. And while it appeared at the outset that there would be enough time to complete it, the sudden illness of a major actor launched a scramble to find material to shoot.
This is the time when you start to realize where you absolutely have to have those people in that scene. These are scenes we can make work without him.
The difficulty? Finding material in the script that utilized both the available location and available talent.
Just tighten up.
These rapid, last-minute schedule changes left some confusion among the departments, particularly the art department, which had to completely redress the set a number of times to accommodate the changes in schedule.
Art hates production.
We're just going to switch this out, right?
This is a flash forward.
Yep.
Yep. It was a mistake that we painted the outside.
I know, but it was done. But you got him painting it before.
We never see the outside of the door. Green, ever. Not once.
Clear communication is essential for the smooth operation of a set, especially in highly charged situations where even a seemingly minuscule debate over the color of a door frame has the potential to cause major time loss.
That was never framed in a shot.
We can't go over it.
Okay, We need to talk about that.
Okay, why don't you talk about it in 2 seconds? Because I can wipe this out because it's really wet and it'll be cream. But if you talk about it now, I can fix it. But like now. No.
The door frame can be in. I just don't want to see the green.
You want to see the green?
Oh, do you have a plant
Okay,
from
yeah.
up here?
Yeah, we just take over just a hint of it. So
Okay, so right.
So we can fix that if I can fix it right now. And we can paint the door green, at least the part that camera can see, if there is any part.
Okay.
That wouldn't be too hard, but I need to do
Let's-
it now or never.
Well, then let's fix it.
Okay.
Let's fix it.
Ben, last word?
Yep. No green.
Ever.
Communication
No
among the
green,
crew
no
is
green, no
clearly
green.
essential. How do you keep people abreast of quick changes?
I'd like to talk to the department heads. It's tough to address an entire crew because they're all off, some are on the truck doing things, some are prepping the next scene. You generally work through your department heads, key grips and gaffers, so they can inform their people. ACs are never far away from the camera, and I'm never far away from the camera, so they're already sort of informed by default, and they're with the DP, so you don't really need to worry about them. The people that need to be informed, really, that are tougher to reach, are people in the art department and makeup and wardrobe. You've got to often go off and find them. That's why I have a second AD generally stationed at base camp.
Second Story Man was shot entirely on location, and location shooting provides the production department with no end of logistical challenges and issues. How does having the location manager on set help you?
Location manager is our liaison with civilians or the real world. They're the ones that deal with people that aren't working for us, and those people tend to be either irate or curious. They put out all the little fires that we've created, and they're great to have around. They're essential.
On day 2, a disgruntled neighbor down the block from where the crew was shooting called the city to file a complaint about noise coming from the set.
A woman down the street complained about the generator, that it was making too much noise. Part of the problem was that she misread a flyer that I gave to everybody on the block, which stated that we were going to be filming Sunday, September 3rd, from 9 p.m. until 3 a.m. So she read that as being today, Sunday, August 27th. It's now after 3 p.m. So she's complaining about the noise, that we should be out of here. According to the officers, we're doing nothing wrong. The generator's not loud. There is an ordinance, but we're not breaking it. They're very nice and just warned me about it, and it's the way it should work.
Andy was able to provide copies of all the necessary city permits, and the shoot went on uninterrupted. Day 3 began clear, but as the set was being dressed and lit, it began to rain heavily. The forecast called for periodic showers on and off throughout the day. Having no material left which could be shot in the rain, the crew waited for a break in the weather while arrangements were made for a company move to the cover set down the street. The rain cleared within an hour, but much of the morning was lost. Only one scene and the company move were completed before lunch. What are the major causes of losing time on a set?
Well, if you consider time loss as being a non-constructive period of time, probably internal things with the production department or director miscommunication about what exactly we're seeing. If a director of photography and a gaffer are taking 2 hours to light a set, we don't call that a waste of time because we're doing other things, and that's part of the day is lighting. So that's not a time waste. A time waste is when they say 2 hours, and they take 2.5 hours. And during that time when they're lighting, we're also doing other things. We're putting people through the work, so we're planning what we're doing next. So real time wastage comes from people being late, equipment failure, and indecision.
I want you to talk about lunch. Does lunch slow a crew down? How do you get people back after lunch? Does the kind of food they eat have anything to do with it?
Well, first of all, it's not lunch. It's first meal, second meal, because that could be at 4 in the morning you have your first meal. That's hardly lunch. Yeah, it slows us down. Lunch is for sissies. I eat lunch about half the time. And it's necessary. You need to take a little bit of a break, and you can utilize that time to talk about what you're doing next. It's kind of tricky the way we make people work during lunch that way. But I like to get in and out as quickly as possible.
And yet it seems that most crew live for lunch.
They live for lunch, and it's slow getting them out of lunch and getting them back on the set and back moving right away, because they're kind of, you know, they're relaxed and they're chatty, and that's time you really have to have your seconds and yourself cracking the whip and getting things moving again.
Rain continued throughout the day, but did not affect the production, since the shoot had been moved entirely indoors. This did not mean that the shoot was progressing as fast as it could, however. The morning's rain had slowed the crew's overall pace, and despite improved working conditions, they never completely recovered. Over the course of the afternoon, the cinematographer lost more and more time to tweaking lighting setups, ultimately costing the production so much time that coverage of the day's final scene was radically condensed in order to stay on schedule. Mike, how do you rein in a director or a DP when they begin to jeopardize the schedule? Is this a common problem?
Yeah, it can be. It can be a very big problem. What we do is try to prevent that from happening, first of all, by saying, you know, do we have more than we can do scheduled for today? And if so, how can we condense this? Can we make this a 2-for-1 shot? Can we cover this a little wider and eliminate this shot? The director is going in, and the director of photography are going in with a creative vision. They're the artists, and you never want to take away their ability to make their vision. But by the same token, you also have to answer to somebody else that's saying, why is this taking so much time? This is costing a lot of money. Most good directors and directors of photography realize this and say, look, you're running out of time, guys. Think about what you can do to condense this. Or if this shot is that important to you, realize you could be sacrificing this shot later on in the day.
Despite cutting shots and condensing the final scene, the day ran long, dipping 1 hour into overtime. By this point, however, the film was back on schedule.
Just look down here. End of the day, so the sun's crazy.
The backyard exteriors, which the crew had been shooting for the last 3 days, were scheduled to be completed by day 4. Going to the cover set on day 3, however, meant a lot of material still had to be shot in the backyard. This is what the schedule for day 4 consisted of. Part of your job is to continually look ahead, to anticipate what's coming next so you can prepare the crew for it. How do you do that?
By nabbing the director and the DP when they're free and saying, what are we doing next? And, you know, what's standing between us and shooting that now? Is it an art thing? Okay, let's get art involved in this. Get them started on it. Is it a lighting thing? Okay, let's get some, you know, lights there that we're not using, and just try to keep leapfrogging ahead of what you're doing.
The first poster is going to be like the poster, political poster right here. And then, you know, shooting it close, then bap.
Okay.
The next poster comes in.
Okay.
And then you pull back and you're going to see the posters all the way down.
Okay.
I'd like to make it 2 shots. Close shot on the hero poster and then a wider shot that includes all of them.
Okay, that's fine.
By the 4th day, the crew had found its stride and was operating at peak efficiency.
Life is good, and it's definitely better than last weekend. The humidity is gone, the bugs are blown around, the schedule is the schedule, which is vitally important and good.
Despite the morning's slight delays, the shoot progressed smoothly, even running ahead of schedule at midday.
Great. We're ahead of schedule. So we'll be leaving early today. Can't find anything else to shoot.
Crew's got to be happy with that.
They gotta love it.
By lunchtime, it was clear that the scheduled scenes would soon be completed and that a decision had to be made. Either production had to find more material to shoot, or else the day would end early.
Done. Damn near done.
There were problems with finding more material to shoot. Not only did all the remaining scenes take place at other locations, thus necessitating a company move, but they involved a radically different cast who might not be available at such short notice.
Mike, we could impose upon Andy Cohen to go shoot those inserts at his house right now.
The inserts we don't need any wood, really. But you gotta light it. You gotta pack up that truck. And that truck's still 20 minutes from going anywhere.
Oh, really?
Yeah, probably. And then drive there. But then you're looking at pushing the day. Hey, Travis. How long before this truck can move?
Before, I mean, it can move temporarily.
No, for like if you want to go shoot somewhere else.
15 minutes.
What do you think?
The only material which appeared viable to shoot was a sequence of insert shots scheduled for the last day at a different location. Mike checked with all departments about the possibility of shooting the inserts at the current location.
Is it A radio or a B radio?
This is V radio. V radio.
How long until we can have V radio?
Ben ultimately decided against shooting the inserts, opting to wait for the scheduled location.
Like the decision was to.
We shot ourselves out of a day. He didn't like that shot. We were trying to get some stuff done from some work that was scheduled Sunday, I think, or Monday. And he didn't like the framing, so we're going to get an establishing shot up the street. And, shoot some pretty clowns or something like that for another half hour and wrap early at night. We got ahead of schedule, and we got too far ahead of schedule.
Day 4 ended early.
Well, you can, I'll take the sticks.
Day 5 was scheduled as a 2-location day, starting at a news station location and then moving across town to a second location in a residential alley. All of the newsroom material was scheduled to be completed by noon, with a company move occurring after lunch. Problems, however, began to surface early on.
Oh, good. We didn't fire you. What are you working on?
The lighting setups for the newsroom were taking an inordinately long time to accomplish. And by the time lunch arrived, the scene had only been covered in one direction.
Well, day 5 sucked all around. I don't think there was really a good thing about it, except for that the footage looks pretty good, which I guess is, really all that matters in the end. But it was, I'm an advocate of a good set experience, and that was not.
What went wrong on day 5?
Well, the best laid plans of mice and men. I mean, it was, we ran into a problem with the location that really wasn't any of our fault. It had to do with the location and miscommunication with the people there.
Bad news arrived over lunch. Permission to shoot in the television station had been granted by the station's news director. But this same news director had failed to alert his weekend engineering staff that the shoot would be taking place. When the shift change at the station occurred, the head of the afternoon staff informed the crew that they would no longer be able to shoot in the newsroom. Andy tried repeatedly to contact the news director, who was ultimately unreachable. Although the crew had gone through the proper channels to secure permission to shoot, internal communications at the station had broken down, thus leaving the crew in the lurch. The production was not allowed to finish shooting in the newsroom. They were, however, allowed to use other areas of the building.
Yeah. Okay, let's do it.
Because that wall was pretty far back,
Mm-hmm.
and the talent would be.
Would we be messing up our line?
I don't think so, as long as we keep the screen direction the same.
The reverse angles of the newsroom had to be faked elsewhere in the building. It was decided to restructure the shot list again, to turn all the reverse angles into close-ups so that it would not be so apparent that they were shot in an entirely different location.
Decaf for Tammy. No, honey, your segment. What is your segment about?
What things have to give when a shoot is up against the wall?
Coverage, primarily. You never want to sacrifice and start getting sloppy in your work just because you're behind schedule. But you can cut the amount of coverage that you do. And sometimes if a director is over-tweaking a performance, you can say, look, you've had X amount of takes. Is it going to get any better after this many more takes? Or is this a larger problem? Can we move on from this now? It's evidently not going to get any better. So primarily coverage and things like that. Also, you try to scale down the size of your shots. Maybe you just get a little bit tighter, you light a little less, you move a little faster.
Clearing the newsroom of gear, moving to the other end of the building, and replicating the previous lighting setup destroyed what was left of an already lagging schedule. The company move was called off and rescheduled for the next day. What was your strategy coming into day 6?
Day 6, we had 2 company moves. which always eat up a lot of time. Fortunately, I knew that they were all sort of, the last place we were going to end up was our biggest lighting setup. Prior to that, there were a couple exteriors where we got by with some silk and shiny board, so it wasn't that big of a deal. We weren't reluctant to move the truck ahead of us and start setting up this big lighting drill. So, while we had added the alley sequence that we were supposed to shoot the previous day, it really didn't hurt us all that much.
Pushing extra scenes from day 5 into day 6 added weight to an already heavy day, turning a 2-location day into a 3-location day, and necessitating 2 company moves. Tell us about company moves. What's the best way to ease in and out of them without losing massive amounts of time?
A company move is basically packing up everything you own and moving it to another place, unpacking it, and resetting it. Huge waste of time, and it should be avoided as often as you can. This particular instance, it wasn't that bad because we weren't moving a great deal of gear. We were working the first 2 things pretty much right off the back of the truck, so it wasn't like we were using great amounts of lights and things like that. They were fairly quick. And so that didn't hurt us in this case.
The day went surprisingly well, considering the large potential for problems. As first meal approached, the pace began to slacken somewhat. Mike dismissed most of the crew to lunch, but held the core crew, who were now racing the sunset to complete the scene. Tell us briefly about meals and the problems of running a crew beyond established break times. What situations warrant overtime? How do you deal with it?
Well, you don't like to run them late. They get grumbly, and you want to keep your crew happy.
What's late? What constitutes late?
Well, in this particular instance, we were about a half an hour late, and it was certainly warranted. I'd do it again in a second because the sun was setting, and I think you won't be able to catch a lot of flack from a crew when a situation like that's happening, because to go back and recreate that, to miss that sunset and recreate another time is far more expensive than anything you'd ever spend on meal penalties.
Walk it back and go higher.
The night scene involved an extensive lighting drill, fight choreography, and a large number of camera setups. The combination of these things threatened to throw the rest of the day off schedule and possibly force the day into an overtime situation. Rather than do this, however, the shot list was restructured to reduce the amount of coverage. The day ended with the film on schedule. Crew call was set for 1 p.m. the next day. Could you explain turnaround?
From the time you wrap until the time that you have a call time, you need to have a 10 or 12 hour, depending on what the deal is, rest period for your crew. That doesn't include anybody in the production department. And that's just, again, a little crew insurance thing, so that they're fresh and ready for the next day. You don't want to overwork your crew. How it can work against you is that if you run late one night, unless you want to pay that turnaround penalty or go into the same rate scale that you left off on, which can get very expensive, you need to break your crew for that certain amount of time, which means then you could be possibly changing the scheduling of your next day just because you ran long previous.
Tell us about turnaround in this specific instance.
We had ran a little bit late, about half an hour late, with the fight sequence that night. We'd crammed a lot of work into that day. We'd shot an additional scene, so we were going to run a little bit late. And the only way it really affected us was, from a turnaround standpoint, was getting the people in the next day all the extras we needed. We had to change the schedule a little bit for them. That was about it.
Like day 6, day 7 was a split day, beginning in the afternoon and continuing into the night.
Drive forward, see where the cop car is. He's going to stop at his first position there. They're going to pull chairs off and then drive forward.
Despite a slow start, the shoot progressed well, and by lunchtime, the crew was on schedule. When you look back over the process of learning your job and your craft, what things do you think were the most difficult to learn?
The most difficult things to learn were the intangibles. It wasn't the numbers and the legal aspects and things like that. It was how to deal with people, and how to look at situations and break them, mentally break them down into elements of time, units of how many extras do I take to fill this large of a space. The intangibles were the hardest things to learn, and it's still happening. I never come away from the shoot without learning something new.
What qualities are most valuable in an assistant director?
You need to have a thick hide and be able to take a lot of criticism and a lot of flack for decisions you make. Any given decision, not everybody's going to be happy with it. You try to make the grips and art department happy, and you make sound mad with some decision. So you got to be able to take a lot of criticism and live with it and deal with those people later on in the same day. You can't take it personally. You have to have some degree of focus. You have to look at a frame and say, what's preventing me from shooting right now? And take those elements and start working on those elements. Am I not shooting because of an actor thing? Okay, let's solve this actor problem and let's shoot. Always have an answer to the question, what's standing between me and the camera rolling?
Okay, it's a wrap.
If you could sum up your philosophy of how to run a film set in just a few phrases, what would that be?
Plan ahead. Sleep is for sissies. A PA without a walkie is an eating sandbag. Every shoot I have different ones I come with, puckish sayings at the end, but mostly the philosophy is always plan ahead and plan for the worst, and stick to the battle plan, stick to the plan no matter what.